Hey, what's up, everybody? It's just Charles Saban. I want to welcome you guys to another episode of the Dreamers Pro Show. We'll cover everything from sports, hot topics, classic debates, entertainment, and we'll give you guys a fresh perspective on things. And we see them. And today we got a hell of a show in store for you guys. Before we get into it, please make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel. Now, just about 2 days ago, we produced a show that features some comments that Jeff Van Gundy made on the show. Come and talk to me, Cameron and Mace's show. Shout out to Cam and Mace. And shout out to them and what they're doing over there. Hopefully we can collaborate with them in the future. That'll be super cool. Anyway, so he goes on the show and he's talking to his former colleague and Mark Jackson, and he's essentially explaining what it was like being fired from ESPN and the difficulties and challenges that he faced on a personal level and how he found his way back into the NBA, I think as a consultant to the Boston Celtics, and now being a lead assistant, head coach for the Los Angeles Clippers with head coach Tyronn Lue. So he discussed that. And the show had a positive reception. A lot of people enjoyed the content that we published there. Look, at the time when we found out Jeff Van Gundy had been fired alongside Mark Jackson, a lot of us were stunned because we were like, how do you get rid of this duo? But then we heard that the reason that he was allegedly fired from ESPN was because Adam Silver wasn't fond of his constant critique on the NBA game during the games in which he would cover, that he would be speaking, covering those games. So the ESPN had to make an executive decision, given the fact that they have a relationship with ESPN, with the NBA. They just paid $2.8 billion for the next 10, 11 years for the rights to some of their games. So it's an easy decision. You want to keep that relationship fruitful. So what happened yesterday, Stephen A. Smith on the Stephen A. Smith show was actually discussing Jeff Van Gundy getting a new position with the Los Angeles Clippers as the lead assistant coach. And in the midst of him discussing that, he then started to talk about his current colleagues in Doris Burke and JJ Redick alongside Mike Breen, who cover, did the NBA finals and all that. But he then started to lament, why he misses, how he misses working with his former colleagues and the excellent job that they used to do for ESPN, and how he wishes they were still at the network. So those are the comments that we want to focus on today. Before we even get into that, today's video is brought to you by our sponsor, Prize Picks, which is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. Prize Picks is really simple. Instead of just selecting a team, you just select two or more players, pick more or less their projected stats, and then you place your entry. For example, this week, I'm selecting two entries. Stephen Curry for more than 25 points, and then I got Anthony Davis for more than 2 blocks and Damian Lillard for more than 4 3-pointers made. Prize Picks is also the only daily sports platform with an injury insurance policy. So for example, if you have a player who gets injured in the first half and doesn't return to the second half, that player gets automatically rebooted. What I also love about Prize Picks is that it offers weekly promotions like Taco Tuesdays. Each Tuesday, Prize Picks discounts select player projections up to 25% to provide even more value. So go to prizepicks.com/CLNS and use code CLNS for a first deposit matchup up to $100. That's go to prizepicks.com/CLNS, use code CLNS for a first deposit match of up to $100. And remember, whenever you support this sponsor, you're supporting this channel. Thank you. So what we want to do now is we want to play exactly what Stephen A. Smith had to say. I want you guys to listen to it in its entirety, and we're going to come back and react to what he had to say. Take a listen to that there.
I miss Jeff Van Gundy. I miss Mark Jackson. This is not me throwing any shade at Doris Burke, JJ Redick, certainly the Hall of Famer Mike Breen. Doris Burke's a Hall of Famer too. This is not about anything like that. This is about the fact that Jeff Van Gundy and Mark Jackson were truly an A-team. They were exceptional at their jobs. They were riveting in a lot of ways. They were an illustrious tag team that the basketball world enjoyed for more than a decade. Love them both, respect the hell out of them. And Jeff Van Gundy having a job back in the NBA, I couldn't be happier for him. He's a good man. Stan Van Gundy, his brother, is a good man. And by the way, the other day I heard Stan Van Gundy on Dan Le Batard's show speaking about how his now late wife Jeff Van Gundy's sister-in-law had passed away after committing suicide. I had no idea. My heartfelt condolences to the Van Gundy family. Back to basketball. Jeff Van Gundy deserves to be what he wants in a game of basketball. If it's a coach, fine. If it's an assistant coach, fine. If it's a color commentator, fine. I respect the hell out of Jeff, and I'm very fond of him. But it's one thing that we all have to understand. And nobody speaks about this because everybody talks about stuff as unfair and, you know, he got let go. In the world of business, when cuts take place, cuts take place. There's hundreds of people who lost their jobs. And it wasn't just at ESPN or at Disney. Have you seen what happened at Meta? Have you seen what has happened at places like Apple and Amazon and other places? The climate that we're living in, these kind of things happen. I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying it's fair. Damn it, it's downright cruel. When have we known the world of business to be otherwise? And I got news for you. I was sad to see Jeff Van Gundy go. Even sadder to see my brother, Mark Jackson, because obviously I'm a lot tighter with him than I am with Jeff Van Gundy. But I'm never concerned about them landing on their feet because of who they are, how impeccable their reputations are, and the kind of opportunities that will inevitably come their way. I can assure you, I know of plenty of people, when they lose their jobs, if they were to lose their jobs, it wouldn't be quite that easy. Matter of fact, it would be significantly more daunting. So again, in terms of Jeff Van Gundy, I miss you, buddy. I wish him and Mark Jackson were still at our network.
So you heard what Stephen A. Smith had to say. Listen, I think Stephen A. Smith made some good points, especially given the horrendous job that ESPN did at the NBA Finals, where they were heavily criticized for the lackluster job they did in terms of actually analyzing the games. Essentially, all their halftime shows was essentially full of just ads, where they rarely broke down anything or talked about anything substantive. And a lot of viewers called them out for the horrible job that they did. And then they also spoke about the crew that called the game. And although they did an all right job, there were some blunders and hiccups here and there. But no one is mistaking them for the duo of Jeff Van Gundy and Mark Jackson. Like, they were just top of the show, top tier. And I think all of us missed them. A lot of people were not happy with the finals in terms of just the matchup overall. The ratings showed it. A lot of people did not tune into the NBA Finals. So you now compound that with the fact that you don't have Jeff Van Gundy, you don't have Mark Jackson calling those games, making it interesting for people to watch and stay and listen. Then you just exacerbate the issue. And essentially, that's the situation there. You also heard Stephen A. Smith talk about the realities, what happens in the corporate world, giving some other examples, I believe, at Meta, of them having layoffs or whatever it is. I get that entirely. But in the case of Mark Jackson and Jeff Van Gundy, given the excellent work that they did for the network, one would have thought they would have found a way to retain them. And then when you look at the people that they would replace them with, you're like, well, these folks aren't better than these. I mean, the thing is, when you're making a cut like that and you're going to replace people, you better be replacing them with someone better. Otherwise, overall, what suffers is the product. Now, some people say these are the decisions that you have to make in business. You give up some of the quality to save some expense, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It is what it is. That's not my problem to solve. That's ESPN's issue to solve. I'm just reporting on what Stephen A. Smith had to say. So the first thing I have to say is simply this. A question rather I have for you guys is this. Do you think ESPN made a mistake by letting go of Mark Jackson and Jeff Van Gundy on television? And given the fact that they do have Doris Burke and JJ Redick, if you had a recommendation for who you think they should have instead of this current trio that they have on covering these finals games, please let me know who you think that would be in the comment section below. And we catch you guys on the next show. Peace.